Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. It is 12:30, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started today. Firstly, I would like to just do a quick audio check with everyone that is out there. If for those of you who are with us and joining in here, if you could just raise your hand on the raise hand function so that I know you can hear me, that would be great. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate that. Great. I'm glad we're here together and audio is working. So I'm Hallie DeWald, and I am the Associate Director of Alumni Career Services here for UGA. If this is your first time attending one of our webinars, just know that we have a couple of these every month, typically, along with some other virtual programming that we do. One of the things we just did this week were some virtual resume and LinkedIn critiques. So if you're ever interested in checking out some other services that we provide here, please feel free to visit our website. You can go to career.uga.edu and go ahead and click on the Alumni tab and find out all of the great stuff that's happening in our office. Additionally, please know, we get this question a lot. If you missed something in today's webinar, or if you just want to watch it again, you will be able to. A recording will be sent to all of the people that registered today, so you'll be getting that later this afternoon. Go ahead and you can expect that in your email. Also, if you have any questions during today's webinar, we have a box where you can go ahead and type in questions. I will be taking a look at those periodically throughout today's webinar and getting those answered for you. And we will certainly have some time toward the end of the webinar to do so as well. So today's webinar is not going to be presented by one of our staff in the Career Center. We actually have Hallie Crawford with us from HallieCrawford.com. She is a certified career coach and our guest speaker. She is not only a certified career coach, but she's a national career expert, and she's based here in Atlanta, Georgia. Her company, HallieCrawford.com, and her team of career coaches have helped thousands of people worldwide actually identified their careers. So she really is working with clients all over and internationally. Hallie is also regularly featured as a career expert in the media. She's been featured in Forbes.com and Wall Street Journal, CNN, and the list goes on. She's just a great, phenomenal career development expert and does a lot of writing and shares her wealth of knowledge with all of us, and I'm so happy to have her with us today. Thank you so much, Hallie, for being here. We're really excited to learn a little bit more about networking and specifically informational interviews, because we know that's a huge piece to a successful job search. So thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that. Great introduction, Hallie. And thank you, everyone, for being here today, especially on what is most likely most of your lunch hours. So we appreciate your time with us. We are going to be talking about 5 ways to conduct successful informational interviews. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you first, so I've been coaching and training for over 18 years now. I founded my business in my late 20s. Fortunately for me, I have loved what I do career-wise for a very long time, which is great. But one of the things I wanted to share with you all right out of the box is that I totally understand, even though this is what I do for a living and I coach people on conducting informational interviews and conducting an effective job search and networking and all of the steps required there, I still do realize and understand that doing something like reaching out to someone that you don't know very well to conduct an informational interview, it can seem intimidating. I am actually more introverted than extroverted. So even after doing this for over 18 years, I still understand that it can feel hard sometimes to push yourself outside your comfort zone, because I feel that way myself as well. When I have to prepare for a networking event or a speaking engagement or something similar to that, I kind of have to psych myself up for it. So I totally get it. Today, I'm much less shy after having obviously practiced this for so long over time and finding ways to make it work for me. And I've learned to put myself out there and use my moments of being extroverted, so to speak, to my advantage. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. And I want you to know that you can do the same thing. You don't have to turn into a completely different person and be extremely extroverted just to conduct successful informational interviews. You just need to do them effectively and be prepared in advance. So the process that I'm going to outline for you today is the process that all of our coaches on my team use to help you, and it will help you enormously, not just be more effective about conducting informational interviews, but be more comfortable doing so because you have the specific steps to follow and you know what you need to do to, be successful at it, okay? And one of the first things as we go here, here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about what informational interviews mean, how they are defined. We're also going to talk about the obstacles to being successful in them, though, and some of the reasons why people just won't conduct an informational interview in the first place, or they're fearful of doing so. Then I'm going to give you 5 specific ways to conduct informational interviews and do it effectively. We're going to talk about action steps at the end because I do want you to walk away with specific action steps that you will take to make this happen. And I also wanted to offer everyone who's on the call today, but also anyone who listens in afterwards, happy to do a free career strategy session with you. I realize that, we're going to give you some really good advice today, but if your situation or scenario is highly specific and unique or different, and you feel like you need some really specific kind of fine-tuned advice on what you need to do in terms of your job search or anything else, I'm happy to do that career strategy session with you. And by the way, as Hallie mentioned, we will do Q&A at the end, but if we don't get to your question for any reason, please feel free to email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. And that's the way that you can set up that free strategy session, but also I'm happy to answer any other questions that come up as you're thinking about what we talk about today. All right, so let's move on to talk about and discuss what an informational interview is. A lot of you probably have heard of this before and may know some of the points here, but I want to make sure that everyone is very clear on all of the key points to understanding what an informational interview is and how we define it. So basically, an informational interview is a one-on-one conversation with someone in an industry or in a role that you are interested in pursuing, that you'd like to learn more about, or that, hey, I want to get into either this company or I want to get into this role and you want to learn more about how to do so, okay? So there are different reasons. If you take a look at this slide here, there's several reasons why one might conduct an informational interview, okay? It could be, even if you're not in job search mode, for this first one, it could be for career seekers who are trying to decide on their career path. So if you're looking at or considering different career ideas, you're trying to make a change and you need to know your career direction and figure that out, it can help you determine what that right path might be. Or it can also help you determine what your next career steps need to be. Hey, I'm not feeling as challenged in my work right now, for example, and I want to take the next step. Conducting an informational interview can help you get that information. The second reason why you might do this is for job seekers. Obviously, it's a way to network into your way into an organization or into a particular industry. It's a way to practice your interview skills as well before there's that pressure of the actual interview. And it's also a very good tool, everyone, to learn how to put your best foot forward in your job search, especially for, like we said, a specific role or specific industry, or even for a specific organization. One of our coaches was talking to a client yesterday, and they were discussing, informational interviews with with people who worked at specific organizations in Atlanta that they were looking at. And one of the things that we told them to do is, talk to them about the buzzwords. What's really important in terms of work environment for that organization? What are they looking for in their new employees? Because that's stuff that they're not always going to lay out there as clearly as we might like in their job opening description, or it's stuff that they just, you kind of hear through the grapevine, okay? So it can enormously help you, not just, hey, I'm looking to get a job and this is a new networking connection. It's really good, obviously, everyone, for information for your search as well. So let's take a look at the next slide, and I'm going to talk to you in the next 2 here about informational interviews, what they are and what they aren't, because sometimes people get confused and we don't want to make any assumptions on what it is. So first of all, it's an opportunity for you to learn what it's really like to work in that field and discover career options or opportunities that exist at that company or with other organizations. So it's an opportunity to do that over time as you kind of network your way, ideally through that organization. It's also a chance to get the inside perspective on a company or an industry before you either accept a job offer or while you're looking into that industry or that organization as a possible place to apply. So it's to get that kind of insider knowledge on what it's really like. It's an opportunity, obviously, to make a connection in that industry and begin to expand or create your network in that field. It hopefully will lead you to finding other people to network with. And finally, it is an option to practice your interview skills, like we said before, with less pressure. Now, I will say something about this, and Hallie, if you can go ahead and get this first poll set up, that would be great. Our first poll question, everyone, is how many of you have conducted an informational interview? So just kind of a yes or no question, and Hallie will read those answers to me in just a second because I can never find where that is on the dashboard here. All right, cool. So in terms of, just really quickly though, while you all are filling that out, you do want to come across and show up and be very professional, obviously, in your informational interview. You want to pretend like it's an actual interview because you want to make a really good impression. But obviously, it is an opportunity to kind of get your feet wet a little bit with the industry, with that role, you know, that kind of thing. And it's obviously, because it's not an actual job interview, there is a little bit less pressure there. So it's good to do a lot of these for that reason as well. Okay, so Hallie, if you can read those out, it'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So 75% of our attendees have done an informational interview before, and only 25% have not.
Okay, good. So I'd love to hear, as we get to the Q&A portion, if there's anything else that you all have found that has been successful for you in conducting these, please feel free to share. And I hope that what we're going to talk about today obviously will enhance your abilities with these. And for those of you that haven't conducted them, they are a really big deal. It is a great way to expand your network and eventually land a job. So highly encourage you to step out there and do it. So what an informational interview is not, it's not an opportunity or a chance for you to tell someone everything about yourself and take too much of their time and just be unorganized and just kind of ramble on. You absolutely don't want to do that. You want to be crisp, to the point. You want to have specific questions that you're ready to ask them, prepared in advance. It's also not a time to ask for a job right then and there. When you're contacting someone about an informational interview, you are asking them for information. You're not saying, hey, I want you to get me a job. Obviously, we all know this, but you want to just tread very lightly on this and be very clear with them that you are looking for information and you just want to pick your brain or pick their brain a little bit more about what it's like to work there, how to put your best foot forward in your search, and anything else that you want to ask them, focusing on information. And also, it's not a time to slack off or obviously be overly casual with the meeting and about your career goals, because remember, you are making an impression and you have to make a good one in order for them to be willing to connect you with other people or, put in a good word for you if you apply at their organization, okay? So you don't want to be too casual about it. You don't want to slack off. You want to come across as professionally as you possibly can. So here's the deal with informational interviews in general. When we talk to our clients about these, only about 50% of them know actually what it is and how to conduct it effectively. A lot of people either don't utilize this as much as they should or could, and also a lot of times they're not doing as effectively as they could. So that's why we talk about this. And 9 times out of 10, our clients will tell us, in terms of their career search, job search, and even making a career transition, they will tell us that they are their biggest obstacle to making it happen. And it's really interesting because I think that a lot of us would assume that, oh, there's some external obstacle that's going on for them. No, it's usually we are getting in the way of our own progress. And that's part of what we're going to talk about in just a second. Just as a quick reminder, if any of you feel like your situation is unique and specific and you need that free career strategy session, don't hesitate to email admin@HallieCrawford.com. I would be happy to do that with you directly. So here are some of the obstacles that we have found, and I do want you all to write some of these down. And if your obstacles or what gets in the way of you conducting these in the first place or conducting them effectively, I want you to write these down for us because you need to understand what holds you back in order to overcome it. So the obstacles that we typically hear from our clients is, oh, informational interviews are for young people. I am, 46, that's how old I am, and that just doesn't make sense. People are going to think I'm weird if I'm doing that. That's not true. We have had clients who are senior level VPs at organizations here in Atlanta, for example, who conduct informational interviews with other people at other organizations, and they always say, gosh, this is a great idea. I wish more people would do this. Some people feel like they're too shy, totally understand that. Some people feel like they don't want to ask for help or don't want to look like they don't know what they're talking about. If any of these obstacles or any others are things that either get in your way of making this happen or making it happen effectively, you need to start addressing it right away, okay? And we'll talk about this a little bit more in the Q&A portion if we need to. One of the books, though, that I wanted to recommend, especially for those of you who are more introverted like I am, it's a great book, The Introvert Advantage. It's listed here on the slide. Marty Olson-Laney is the author of that book, and it's just fantastic. It's a great tool to help people who are more introverted put themselves out there a little bit more in the most effective way, while still feeling like they're being who they are, okay? So why informational interviews are important? It's because statistics show that between 60 to 70% of the jobs out there that are secured or landed are secured through the hidden job market. And this is basically unadvertised positions that people find out about from recruiters or from networking. We had a client who is in Maryland, and he was just starting his job search, and he spoke with a colleague, a good friend at another organization, and when he was talking to him, he found out that there was actually going to be a position opening up in the next several weeks. They were waiting to figure out how to kind of backfill that person's work before they let that person go, unfortunately. But the point is, you never know what you're going to hear and what opportunities you're going to hear about when you're talking with people. So you absolutely need to leverage informational interviews as a big part of leveraging the hidden job market, okay? Here are the 5 ways to conduct them effectively. These are the 5 steps we're going to go through today. We're going to talk about how to and where to find those connections and how to expand your network, how to set up and prepare for the informational interviews, conduct them effectively, stay in touch with the connection afterwards, and finally, how to stay organized throughout the course of your job search, especially with informational interviews. But, staying organized in general is going to kind of broad scope go across all of your networking efforts as well, okay? So first of all, you need to identify the connections that you want to make or where you can find these connections in the first place to conduct these informational interviews. The who is listed on the left. It can be friends, it can be family members, it could be LinkedIn connections. When was the last time, for example, that you went through your LinkedIn connections and did a quick search on keywords for the roles that you're looking for, or the responsibilities and tasks, or even the organizations that you're interested in? It's good to do this at least once a month, give or take. It depends on how aggressive you're being with your job search, but you need to do this regularly, because as you're adding to your list of LinkedIn connections and expanding your network, that's a whole new set of second and third connections that you could be leveraging, okay? One of the things that I actually tell clients, which sounds kind of basic and silly, but the majority of the time, we'll be talking with a client and we'll say, okay, you need to leverage your existing connections. And 9 times out of 10, they'll tell us, oh, I don't know anybody in that field. And then they come back to the next coaching session and they're like, oh, well, I thought of 5 people that I just had forgotten about. Go through your phone, like literally open up your contacts on your phone and line by line, person by person, go through your phone first and just write down anyone who might have a connection that you're interested in talking with, or that is just a well-connected person that you would like to start with in general. Don't ignore or just assume that, oh, I don't really know anyone, I don't have any warm leads, because you probably will at least have one, okay? And the warm leads are obviously the best kind of route to take first, because they're going to be more responsive and more helpful to you. You want to absolutely leverage your alumni association, and Hallie did not pay me to say this, I tell all of our clients this. You want to leverage your alumni association, because if you sent, for example, through the UGA LinkedIn alumni group, if you sent a message and it said, UGA alumni or a fellow alum, they're more likely to get back with you and talk with you and give you their time, okay? So definitely leverage the alumni association for these connections. You also want to make sure you're checking out just kind of general networking groups. It could be local for your community. It could be just business groups that you want to network with, okay? So the reason why I bring up the networking groups is I know it sounds trite because everyone always says this, you know, like, oh, networking can happen everywhere. Okay, sure, exactly. One of our clients who moved to Atlanta from Boston, he went to a Red Sox viewing party at a local bar and thought, oh, well, this isn't really going to be business. It's just more for fun. But he met someone who worked at Bank of America who gave him a list of openings and a link to a website that helped him enormously with his job search. So you never know where you'll meet someone who could be helpful. Next, you want to take a look at association meetings. So especially if you are considering moving into a different industry, you want to take a look at, okay, what are the relevant associations, the big ones for that industry? Do they have any meetings coming up or any webinars coming up? Join those groups. Go to their first meeting as a guest or something like that in order to meet more people. The social groups we already talked about. Career fairs that are either hosted online or otherwise by UGA or other organizations, you want to check those out because when you meet with the person who's sitting at the desk or table, who's the recruiter there, you can kind of conduct a very quick informational interview with them. You do want to sell yourself. Obviously, that's one of the main parts of this, but you can spend a few minutes asking them about, you know, what are some of the core values of the organization. When you ask them questions and don't just spend the whole time selling yourself, that looks a lot more thoughtful on your part and more professional, okay? So you want to kind of have it go both ways when you meet recruiters at career fairs. And how we conduct these informational interviews, this is listed on the right-hand side. It could be over the phone, it could be Skype, FaceTime, something like that. It could be via email. We prefer that it's not, but if someone is just not willing to or able to respond to you and, you know, isn't willing to give you time over the phone or some other way, you can ask your questions via email. That is an option. Ideally, your informational interviews with people who could be extremely helpful to you and vice versa, ideally they're going to be in person, but please don't put that pressure on it. Give the person an option. I'd love to take you to coffee or take you to lunch, but if that's not an option for you, I completely understand. I'm happy to conduct the informational interview over the phone, okay? It's going to depend on the person, obviously, how well you know them and what kind of lifestyle and job they have, okay? Number two is that you want to set up the informational interview itself. So we talked about establishing and identifying additional connections. The second one is to set it up and do so effectively. Let them know, like we said before, you're looking for information, not a job. I recommend that once you have the informational interview set up, and even consider doing this in the very first email that you send to them. If you think that this person would be less likely to respond to you because they're busy or it's a cold lead, send them the questions in advance of talking with them. One way or the other, get that over to them. The reason why this is such a big deal, when people conduct informational interviews with me and they send the questions in advance, number one, I know they're not going to try to spend 2 hours of my time. Like, I know we can cover 4 or 5 questions in the half hour or whatever it is I'm able to give them at the time. And secondly, it shows me that they're prepared and that I am going to be extremely able to help them because it gives me a chance in advance to kind of think on what their questions are versus being caught off guard. So sending those questions in advance, it sets a really good tone for the conversation. It helps you all stay on track, and it makes you more, or makes them more likely to respond to you and spend time with you because they're going to feel like, gosh, this will be time well spent because this person is organized and on the ball, and they're going to use my advice and take it to heart, okay? Let them know in advance as well that you intend to keep it brief, 10 to 15 minutes, whatever seems reasonable for them. Be prepared, and we'll talk about this actually a little bit more in just a second here. But I would say to people, just in general, that you'd like around 15 minutes of their time, just because a lot of people these days, they're busy, they can't give much time, and if they're more likely to get on the phone with you, they're more likely to go a little bit beyond that 15 minutes once they're already on the phone with you, okay? So let them know that you're going to keep it brief. I would shoot for the 15-minute time frame. Be prepared to answer additional or have additional questions in case it goes longer than the 15 minutes though, for sure. So for example, and that's why I have this on the slide here, one of our clients conducted an informational interview. He was prepared for 30 minutes, and the person he was interviewing, the woman, was actually able to and gave him an hour of her time. And luckily he was prepared, but had he not been, he said the conversation would have just stopped. So you want to be prepared with additional questions just in case. Okay. And at the beginning of the phone call and when you set it up in the first place, you do want to make sure that you both are clear on the amount of time that they're able to provide. Okay. So make sure that you know exactly how much time they can provide to you so that you stick to that time and don't go over the time. Okay. I'm going to give you an email template on the next slide here. Oh, and by the way, I neglected to mention something to everyone that's really important. If any of you would like a copy of the slides, please don't hesitate to email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. We would be happy to provide the slides to you so you don't have to frantically write everything down. And that goes especially for the next slide where there's an actual email template that you can use. So the email formula, and we do, by the way, recommend that people email your connection first. Don't just call them right out of the blue because they'll be caught off guard. It's better to, send an email or connect with them or send a message through LinkedIn or a connection request with, this message inside of it so that they have time to kind of think about it and make a decision about what to do. You want to introduce yourself. You want to let them know how you found them. In the subject line, you want to mention the referral source. They will be much more likely to open that email or message from you if you do that, okay? We talked just a moment ago about emailing them first versus calling. I would recommend if you don't hear back from them after about 5 business days, give or take, go ahead and pick up the phone and ask them. You can leave a voicemail or you can talk to them and say, I was calling to see if we could set up a time to talk in the next, couple of weeks. Give them some breathing room and some time. By the way, when you make the phone call, if you need to do that, write out a script of what you want to say to them if you get their voicemail, so that you sound like confident and you know exactly what you want to say and you're not stumbling. And also write out a script of what you want to say if you get them live or the phone, okay? So email first and then call to follow up. I think that is completely reasonable. As long as you're professional, everyone, you can be assertive and kind of pesky about things as long as you're not being a stalker, obviously, and as long as you're professional about it and not demanding that they give you time, and also not demanding that they give you time tomorrow, that, it's in the next few weeks, whatever works best for them. Next, you want to obviously let them know you're wanting an informational interview, and you can use that language, okay? Include times that you are available. So when you send this email, put times in there that you're available over the next few weeks. Make it easy for them. Don't make them go hunt and peck in their calendar and write you back with, here are the times I have, because they're less likely to do that and just less likely to respond. If you send them at times right then and there that you can speak, again, in the next several weeks, give them some leeway because some people book out their appointments really far out. Give them some leeway. But if you give the times to them right away, then they can just choose and get back with you, okay? If it's by phone, you call them, so make sure you get their phone number. If you're meeting them in person, make sure they know exactly where you're meeting. Provide directions to them. Make sure that you give them your cell phone number just in case they have an issue, and provide them with your cell phone number as well, okay? By the way, just sort of as a side note, and then I'll show you the email template in just a second. And as a reminder, if you need the slides, admin@halliecrawford.com. But one of the things that you want to make sure of is when you're in job search mode, you need to make sure that you have an email signature line that is automatic and automatically, attaches to every single email that you send out. And here, let me go to this email template so you all can take a look at it while I'm talking. It drives me nuts, just being honest with you all, when I'm working with a vendor, for example, and I have a call with them or I need to call them, and the easiest way for me to try to find their contact information is to search through the last email that they sent me. If their contact information is not in there, I'm just frustrated, okay? So have and make sure that you have a very professional looking email signature, standard signature line that appends or adds to every single email that you send out. Have your name, any degrees that would be relevant to the jobs you're looking for. Put your email address in there, put your LinkedIn profile as well, put a quick branding statement that says who you are so they know kind of what you're looking for and what your expertise is, and obviously have your cell phone number on there as well, okay? So here is an example on this next slide of a template email that you could use, just to give you some ideas, some languaging, okay? You want to introduce yourself again, like we said, let them know what you're looking for. Here are the dates and times I'm available. Like I said a moment ago on the previous slide, if the person is a cold lead, I would definitely say these are the 2 or 3 questions that I'm interested in getting answered, okay? Because again, that will show them exactly what you're looking for and they know that you're being upfront about it, okay? So that's one thing I would add if the lead is a little bit colder. And this is the template that you can use to send that email introduction. Okay, so setting up and then preparing also for the informational interview. Let's talk about that next. The next thing that you want to do, obviously, is develop your questions. You want to have a very solid list of thoughtful questions, not just generic things that you can find online, okay? So do research in advance of your informational interview on the company or the organization that they work for. Look at their press releases. Find out if there's any big trends or if the company has been in the news at all, because you need to seem knowledgeable about things up front. You don't want to just go in completely cold. And you also want to make sure you do a little bit of homework and research about their role, read their LinkedIn profile, and there may be a couple of things that you want to pick out and pick up on as a way to connect with them when you meet with them or talk with them over the phone. Obviously, fellow UGA alum would be one thing. You could talk for a moment about their experience at UGA, their degree, whatever it was. Here are some questions that you can focus on during the course of your informational interview, though. It's going to depend, obviously, on what your goal is, what your career goal is, and why you're performing the informational interview. So some examples could be, what are some of the trends in the industry? What are some of the challenges at your organization or within this role? What are the qualifications and requirements for this role? What are some of the soft skills that are required for, this type of position? One of the things that I want to make sure, especially for those of you who are in active job search mode, is you want to ask, how can I put my best foot forward in my job search? What is your company looking for? Or organizations or companies in this industry, what are they looking for? What do I need to focus on in my resume? You want to make sure that you have your 4 to 5 questions and then have at least 10 total in case they give you more time that you want to cover during the course of that call or that meeting. And here's the deal, everyone, is you want to run the show to a certain extent. Obviously, you're going to be asking them questions, so they're going to be talking a lot. But you want to make sure that you keep track of time so that you get them out of there on time in the time frame that they've said. Don't leave it to them. And you want to make sure, ideally, that you get all of your questions answered. So don't hesitate to say, that is so helpful. Thank you for that comprehensive response. I'd love to move to the next question if we can. Don't hesitate and be afraid to kind of run the show a little bit during the course of this, okay? We talked a moment ago in the previous slide, about research a little bit. So here are some of the things that I would recommend you check out and research in advance. The industry, like we said, recent trends, software that's common, what are the job titles that are most common and would be a match for what you're looking for, any lingo or jargon that you may need to start to learn or get up to speed on. You want to research the company, like we said, check out their social media. A lot of people forget to do that. They just look at their website and they think they've checked the box. You want to research them and look at them on LinkedIn, but also, are they on Twitter and what are they saying and what's going on there? Look at and check out the role, again, the job titles, like we said. Read some of the job openings that are appealing to you so that you have a sense of what some of the requirements for those jobs might be. Again, so you don't go in there totally cold and you can say, I read that XYZ, a lot of the positions out there require this. Do you find that to be true for your organization? That's a much more thought-provoking question than just, hey, can you tell me the top 5 requirements, of this position? If you can have some ideas or suggestions for it, that would be even better. And as we said just a moment ago, find some common ground with them. Do your homework on the person that you're interviewing, okay? Find that common ground, understand their background, so that, again, you have some thoughtful comments or questions to bring into the conversation with them, okay? Just really quickly, before we get to the next slide here, if any of you feel like you need additional help, not just with informational interviews, but with figuring out, okay, what is my next step in terms of my career direction, or any other additional help with your job search or elements of that, happy to talk with you about our career coaching services. These are some of the testimonials from our clients and some of the places where they've secured positions. So it's a free call talking with me for just a few minutes to ask any questions you may have and make sure that it's a fit if you need assistance, additional assistance. So step number 3, we talked about connections and we talked about setting it up and preparing. Now we're going to conduct, obviously, the informational interview. It's time to go. So either you're going to call on time or you're going to arrive early so you're prepared. As I said before, you want to make sure you keep track of the time and stick to the time that you both have agreed to. Dress professionally, and even, by the way, if it's over the phone, but especially if it's a Skype video call, and I would recommend doing video calls with people if possible, because people connect with people more so when they can see a face and see your mannerisms and, you know, understand how you come across. So if that's the case, and if you can get them to do that, like a Skype video call, for example, or FaceTime or whatever, dress professionally, obviously. But even if you're just doing a phone call, I would still recommend dressing professionally because we behave differently when we have a suit on versus just sweatpants, okay? That would be my recommendation for that. Have your resume and business cards handy, especially obviously if it's in person, and ask them if it's okay to email them your resume at the end, for example. So when you're conducting the informational interview, if it's in person especially, for sure exchange business cards, absolutely. That's a given, and connect with them on LinkedIn, okay? Don't just shove over your resume, though. Ask them, would it be okay if I provided you with a copy of my resume in case you come across anyone who has an open position, or whatever the action item is afterwards. Ask them if it's okay, if they'd like a copy of it, and if they would prefer to have it emailed to them, that's fine too. But have it prepared and with you, because if they ask for it, you need to have it, okay? Act like it's an interview, we said that before, and have your questions written out and a way to take notes. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like you have to go into this with every single thing memorized. Have a notepad with you, something that looks professional, have your questions there and a way to take notes so that it demonstrates to them too that not just that you're prepared, but you're taking it seriously and you're really going to take their advice to heart, okay? At the end of the informational interview, kind of to conclude it, you always want to ask people these questions. How can I help you? And make sure there's time for them to respond. Please don't feel bad if you feel like there's no way that you can help them, okay? I felt this at the beginning of my career enormously. And I remember a woman I was networking with, she's like, Hallie, it's not right away. It doesn't have to be, you know, an immediate return. There are things that I'm sure that I'll be able to ask you for help with later, and you'll be willing to do so. So ask the question even if you don't feel like there's anything that you can help them with, because you never know. There may be an article that you can share with them later on down the line, or someone that you could actually connect them with. You want to also ask them for sure, is there anyone else you think it would be helpful for me to talk to? And would you mind sending an email introduction to them or a LinkedIn introduction? So here's the deal with this piece, everyone. You don't want to just leave it to chance and have them say, yeah, give me your resume, I'll keep you in mind and I'll let you know. Be more assertive and proactive and ask them if there is anyone else, and if it's okay if there is someone that they see or that you see in their LinkedIn, connections. If I see someone in your, roster of LinkedIn connections, would it be okay if I asked you for an introduction? Yes or no, they'll tell you, okay? But you want them to send a message to the two of you so that you then have the contact information of the other person, if they're willing to do so. Some people are not willing to do this, but it's better to ask and have them say no than have it be passive. You want to take the reins and be in control of the situation as much as possible. So always ask for that email introduction where both of you are on that email, or a LinkedIn message where it's an introduction for both of you so that you can be the one following up. And then finally, at the end of the informational interview, You want to ask them directly, may I stay in touch with you? Is it okay if I touch base with you and kind of keep you posted on my search within reason? And, you know, if I have additional questions, can I reach out to you to ask? And what's the best way to do so? Is email better or phone better? Ask permission to stay in touch and find out the best way to do that so that you guys have kind of co-created what you're going to do next. And obviously, if there's any action items here, like someone for you to follow up with, et cetera, you want to do that in an extremely timely manner. Get back with them, you know, within 48 hours to touch base on that. And again, like we said, make sure that you connect with them on LinkedIn if you're not already connected. Okay, so tip number 4, in order to be successful with informational interviews, is to stay in touch with them in some way, shape, or form, unless they said no, obviously, to staying in touch, which most likely they won't. Immediately, you want to send, I like, an email and a handwritten note, and send the resume, like we said, if appropriate. I like the email for the immediacy of it, and then a handwritten note, mail it out a couple days later and say something different than you said in the email. You know, greatly appreciate your time, and, you know, your comment on this made me really think about this, this, and this. But, you know, people just don't send letters and notes as much these days. It will help you stand out. Connect with them on LinkedIn, like we said. Make sure that you write a message, not just the standard invite. And, you know, write a message inside of the box. You all understand what I'm saying, but make sure you say something, not just blast it off, okay? Keep in mind, everyone, that phone apps for LinkedIn commonly, I believe it's all of the apps for all the different kinds of phones. If you connect with someone on LinkedIn on your phone, you will not be able to put a message in there. That is okay to do so if you're sitting there right away with them and you connect with them at that moment. If that's not the case and that immediacy isn't, you know, an option, or you guys don't have time, wait till you get home so that you can send them a note inside of it instead, okay? Follow up with any referrals immediately, and keep each person posted with your progress along the way. So the person that you just did the informational interview with, when you talk with Joe or Sarah or whoever it was that they referred you to, you let them know that you spoke with them and thank them again about it. Okay, you need to make sure that you keep everyone posted, and check in with them every 2 to 3 months approximately. If they said it was okay and you feel it would be helpful to do so, depending on the person and what you discuss, and especially obviously if there were referrals, send them an article, refer someone to them, give them a quick update on your job search, or update them on connections they make for you. There are different ways that you can keep people posted on your progress, and those are some examples as a way to stay in front of them, okay? Here on this next slide is a quick thank you note template of, you know, something that you can say in your handwritten note or in your email. You want to swap it out, have them be different, like we said, but this is a template you can use for one or the other as a thank you for them for taking the time. And you absolutely have to do this because they just took their time out of their busy day to chat with you for a few minutes, and they didn't have to do that. Okay, so tip number 5, so this last tip here for conducting informational interviews is take a moment every single week to stay organized in your job search. So one of the things, and this is broader than just informational interviews, obviously. This is about staying organized with your job search from a comprehensive perspective. Maintain an Excel sheet, and this is what we recommend, to help you track the contact information of the people that you've met with and reached out to, the dates that you have talked with or met with them, the information that you shared and that they shared with you, any referrals they gave you, and write down what your next follow-up action is in terms of what you want to say or do, and also what the timeline would be, okay? And you want to make sure that you update your sheet once a week at a minimum. I would recommend ideally twice a week. You've got to stay on top of this stuff, because if you are, and Hallie, if you could set up the next poll number 2 for us, that would be great. But if you're doing networking or, you know, establishing your network effectively and really reaching out to a lot of people like we want you to, you're going to get confused by who said what, and you need to make sure that you stay organized. So our number 2 poll question is, how many of you have a daily and weekly schedule for your job search? Because that's what we want our clients to have. You have a daily schedule and kind of routine for what you do, and you have a weekly schedule as well as goals that you want to achieve. So take a moment to reply to the poll, please. We appreciate it.
Yeah. So we have responses, Hallie. 22% said that they have, and 78% said that they have not.
Okay, all right. So thank you all for being honest. Please know that the people that said no, that's so common with our job seekers and with our clients, so don't feel bad. We do have an Excel sheet that we use and give to our clients. It's complimentary. You can just email us at, again, admin@HallieCrawford.com. It's a free job search worksheet. It's set up in Excel that will help you track your search and set up and establish daily and weekly goals, okay? Because the tabs are already pre-filled out for the different things that you need to be doing for your search. And inside of each of those tabs, each sheet is organized in a way that will help you stay on top of everything that we've talked about in addition to the networking, okay? So don't hesitate to reach out to us at this email for that worksheet and or for the presentation. We're happy to share both with any of you. All right, one of the things I wanted to say before we start to wrap up to get to the Q&A portion, I want you to all to start to think about what your action steps will be. Pick and identify one action step you'll take in the next week, and one of those things can be to connect with me on LinkedIn. We share a lot of career advice in our feed on different topics. If you just search for Hallie Crawford or HallieCrawford.com, you'll find us on LinkedIn pretty easily. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can ask me questions that way if that's preferable for you versus email, for example. All right, so let's go to our action steps and, picking up the ball with us and what we're going to decide to do in the next couple of weeks here, and also to the Q&A portion. So I wanted to close, before we go today, I wanted to close with this quote from Michael Jordan. It's great. And I wanted to share with you all that, like, successful people, I think sometimes we make the assumption that people that we know or, admire or whatever it is in the business world or whatever, athlete or, whomever it is, I think sometimes we assume that they didn't have any obstacles, that they're just so fantastic and they just didn't have any obstacles at all. But that's not the case. Successful people have obstacles just like we do. The difference is that they pushed through and they learned and determined how to move around those. So if you're trying to achieve something, there always will be roadblocks, okay? And as Michael Jordan says, I've had them, everybody has had them. But obstacles don't have to stop you. If you run into a wall, don't turn around and give up. Figure out how to climb it, go through it, or work around it. That's the bottom line. And it's the same thing with your job search. I know it can feel daunting, totally understand that. But you need to just take, even if it's a baby step, take one baby step in the next week to get the momentum going. It will build. It's like a snowball. It will build upon itself, and each step subsequently will become easier, okay? So I want you all to please identify 2 action steps that you will take in the next week. Feel free to share those online as well as ask any questions. Quick reminder, as you're starting to think about your questions, if we don't get to yours today, for any reason, or if you feel like you need really specific advice, for your unique situation from what we talked about today, just email us at admin@HallieCrawford.com. I would be happy to chat with you in that session. Okay, Callie, so let's go ahead and go to the Q&A portion. And if you could just read out any questions that have come through, I will go ahead and answer those in the next few minutes.
We have a question here. Let me just here. Okay, so yes, so if you've already applied for a position and you haven't done an informational interview, is it too late? Should you try to reach out to someone after you've already applied?
No, I don't think so. So here's the deal. This is a great question because people will ask us this all the time. What's the timing, all of that. So a lot of times informational interviews for, a lot of people will be kind of their foot in the door once they're well before they've, already applied. There is nothing wrong with conducting an informational interview after you've already applied for a job. Just let them know that when you talk with them and gear the time towards, if I get an interview, how can I handle that? And is there a way that I should best follow up? Do you have any ideas or suggestions on following up to help me increase my chances of getting an interview? So you would just tailor your questions to that specific situation. Great question, though. Anything else?
No, we don't have any other questions at this time.
Okay, that's fine. Hopefully
Yeah,
that means we answered the
some
majority of them.
today. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, as we said, if anyone would like a copy of the presentation so that you've got, the email templates and all the text that we provided, please don't hesitate to reach out. And Hallie, you said you'd be sending out the recording as well.
Yes.
And also, if anyone has additional questions, like I said, if you think of it like next week or 2 weeks out, don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to answer via email. It's not a problem.
Thank you so much for your time today, Hallie, and thank you for everyone who's been on the call with us. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.